It's interesting how love and peace arises when nothing is present.
Yes. Yeah. It's really because think about the mind. Like the mind is like, it's like a rabbit. Like it's just jumping around, jumping into the past, jumping into the future. Of course, you're not going to be able to feel like love or peace or anything. Like you got to train it. You got to train. You got to teach it that you're safe.
Please, God, allow us to say the words that need to be spoken to help as many people come to love and freedom in their own hearts as possible. Allow us to use your power to channel it through us and allow us to say statements that are the truth to the deepest level that we know, and let us impact as many people and as deeply as possible as we can. Welcome to the show, my man.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Danny. Very happy to be here.
A lot's changed in my own life, personally, since our first podcast in 2021. And I'm really grateful to know you, and I'm really grateful for your writing because
thank you.
Really helped show me what's possible by going deeper. So just want to start by saying thank you.
I mean, I'm more than happy to serve. That's the whole point of the mission, is to hopefully inspire people to take their own path of personal development, whatever way fits their current conditioning. So I'm happy to see that. I'm also really happy for, I feel like I say this often nowadays, people will ask like, how did you, how do you get to this point and whatnot? And it's just a matter of continuity. It's just like you keep putting one step in front of the other. So I remember when we did that pod together, and I've been watching you the whole time. I've been seeing like, yeah, Danny's here, Danny's there doing his thing. And so I'm happy that we get to reconnect in this moment.
Yeah, really special.
Yeah.
Tell me about the 45 days of meditation you did.
Oh, yeah. It was deep, man. It was it was deep. It was like I put my astronaut helmet on and I was just exploring the universe. It was my second silent 45-day meditation course, and it was interesting because the first one was quite tranquil, and in this one there was more like of this thickness, this fear coming up, and at first, when the fear comes up, like the reaction is, this scaredness. But I was really grateful that it was coming up because now that, I've been 7 days out of the course, I gave a talk the other day at South by Southwest. And when I felt myself go on stage, I was like, whoa, the level of anxiety is so much less than ever before, right? Because what's anxiety is like another manifestation of fear. And though there were challenging moments in the 45-day course, I was grateful for them because they helped burn away that heaviness that was tucked deeply, deeply, deeply inside my mind.
What was that?
I think it was just a load of ignorance, It's ignorance that wraps itself up in different emotions. And the interesting thing is that we exist, right? When you and I are talking, we're existing at the conscious level of the mind, and the conscious level of the mind is very thin, but the subconscious is humongous. So as I'm traveling more deeply inward, just came across that and I was like, oh, good. Now let me accept it. Let me befriend it. Let me just give it space, and, it'll burn away on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then take me through what's it like coming out of something like that?
Oh, coming out. It was interesting. So I spoke to a friend on the day that I came out. He asked me the same question. He's like, how do you come out and land on your feet? And I was like, I haven't thought about it, but over the years, I've been, meditating quite seriously for 12 years. A routine has arisen without me even really noticing.
That's what happens.
And the routine is super simple. I come out, first thing my wife and I do, we go to the grocery store, we fill up the fridge because there's no food to eat. So the most basic human things that we need to take care of. And after that, I get on the treadmill and I run because I love running. And I haven't run, in that course, you're just like, I'm sitting 11 hours a day, literally, like on my butt meditating. And so I ran 3 miles. And then after that, it's this, like I'm surveying the family, reach out to my sister, we talk, reach out to my brother, we talk, reach out to my mom, and just making sure that everyone's okay. So, because I don't have contact with them during those 45 days. So it was more so, I take care of myself, make sure I have food, run, start like re-strengthening my body because I lose a lot of muscle mass during that time. And then check out all the family affairs, what's going on, and how can I help? And then after that, then I start attacking work again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you notice how the different things that you add into your body impact you?
Oh, yeah. Totally. I mean, I'm eating different food right off the bat because we get like really simple, light vegetarian meals. And normally outside of the courses, like I'm an omnivore, right? I'm eating a bunch of different things. So I feel the difference when I have, more protein in my body. I'm getting a little stronger, a little more alert. Same thing when I, start running and I start building the muscle mass, like my body's like in this mode of, when you're in the retreat, it's like you're secluded from the world and you're almost like in a cave. And when you come out, you're like, okay, I'm ready to, I'm ready to hunt, ready to get back out there. And yeah, it's quite a difference. And I'm only like 7 days out. So when I stepped on stage the other day, I was like, this is weird. This is weird. Like people are over here gathered to listen for us to like share space in that moment. But it was so funny because after all that inner exploration, I know that like fundamentally, like I'm not, Danny and Diego are talking. That's true, but like not really real. Like I'm not. This isn't like a real thing. So it felt so funny being there and being like, okay, now I'm gonna speak, and then it all went beautifully. Like it's probably one of the best speeches I've given. But it was funny getting back into that old mode of just like living in this Newtonian level of existence.
Yeah, what do you mean by this isn't really real?
So as I've been meditating, I've been realizing more and more that this sense of identity that wants to be static, it wants to be like Diego is a person and Diego has these beliefs and Diego has these family members, and it's like trying to build this mosaic that doesn't change, but that actually is disingenuous. Like when you are existing in this reality, your only option is to move forward with the river of change. Right? The river is only moving forward and it's constantly reverberating and changing and fluctuating. So when you fight that by trying to have a static sense of identity, life is going to hurt. It's going to hurt. So I think the more that I've been meditating, and the object of meditation is impermanence, right? You're trying to understand impermanence through the framework of the body. And when you really understand impermanence, you're like, oh, not as everything's impermanent. The whole universe is impermanent. And that loosens up that sense of self. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautifully put, because there is a feeling that so many people have often of, I need this to be this way in order to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's other people. And sometimes themselves with things that they can control.
Yeah.
Or seem to be in their control. But it's like, I need you to do this.
Yep.
I need you to show up this way for me to be okay.
Right.
What do you do about that if you are operating under that framework?
I mean, that framework is going to, like, what happens when you stretch and break your attachments? Like, you feel pain in your mind. And when you're trying to control, like, the people around you because you love them and you may even want what's best for them. And the person near you that you love so dearly, like, I've had family members who I want them to be okay. I want them to have beautiful lives, but then they get sick and something happens and like you have no control. But you're noticing in that moment that like when you get super attached to control, the universe just kicks your butt. Like it's just like you can't control. I can control my actions as best as I can, but then the only real opportunity I have is to accept what's happening around me. And you can do your best. You can have people like, if you have a partner or whatnot, you make commitments to each other. But even then, you just can't control people outside of you.
Yeah. It's hard, man.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like the need for someone else to do something to be okay
Yeah.
is so pervasive. And catching yourself in it is a really important part, I feel, of being human.
Yeah, totally. But exactly what you said. So the need for someone else to do something for you to feel okay, what you're actually seeking is a particular feeling in the body. I think this is one of the really important things that more and more people are understanding. And this is something that the Buddha understood and helped him liberate himself, is that it's not the thought or the activity that's happening outside of me that's making me tense or stressed. It's these sensations in the body and the way that I'm reacting to these sensations. So when a family member or a partner or whatnot, when they do something that you like, you feel a pleasant sensation on the body. And you want that pleasant sensation over and over again. But, that's something that's happening inside of you. That's your perception. That's your reaction.
And how do we get better at recognizing that as it's happening?
It requires cultivation, like happiness, peace. These are things that require like intentional development. Like it's just not going to, right? I've been watching your story. I've been watching how you've been meditating, how you've been getting more connected with yourself. And that doesn't just like happen, right? And even if it does slightly happen, it's still like an invitation for you to develop it more. And I think the happiest people that I know, the most peaceful people, like I have one person who's who I think of as one of my teachers. This man, he's been meditating for 50 years, very seriously since his early 20s. His whole life has been dedicated to service. Literally his whole life, he's just been focusing on helping others come out of suffering, come out of tension. He's helped thousands and thousands of people. He's never written a book, never cared about fame, never been on a pod, like he's just focused on serving others, and he is so unafraid. Like his mind is so clear, and he's, old. He's getting older. I think he's about like 76, and he's like so unafraid of death. And it's just like, to me, it's like, okay, you have the qualities that I'm trying to develop, so I'm trying to hang around with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are your fears?
My fears, I think the main ones are like really simple. Like I love my wife so much. And that's something that comes up in my retreat often, where it's like, if I didn't have her, the idea of not having her creates this feeling of inner chaos. And I can feel that stress and that tension, and I can feel my attachment to her. And I know that her and I, we're so, like, our bond is so strong and it feels so old. But to love her better, I need to keep working on that fear, because it's so, like, you can literally feel the grasping of it. And the other side of it is just like not doing right by my parents. Like my parents, like, they moved us from Ecuador when I was about 4 years old. We came to the United States. We were super poor when we were here. My mom, she worked cleaning houses. My dad worked at a supermarket, and they were like hardworking individuals, but there was no way out of the poverty trap. Not until my brother and I and my sister got older, and we were able to pitch in and help each other as the five of us. But that's one of my fears too, is like not making the most of my life and making my life of service and holding up the ideal. Because even though my parents were like wildly poor, I heard this story from a good friend of mine. So when we immigrated to Boston from Ecuador, I was 4 years old, and about like 6 years later, a few friends immigrated from Ecuador as well. When they got to Boston, my parents showed up to their new apartment with a trash bag full of clothes. Because it's Ecuador is a very warm climate, especially where I'm from. And Boston is very cold. So they just like showed up with all these clothes for these people who were like, also just entering into America. And I'm like, I know my parents don't have anything. And these people actually have less. And my parents are sharing the little bit that they have. So to me, it's like, I don't know, my parents feel like a guiding light. So I want to just treat them well.
What's the fear there with the parents?
I think the fear there is not, like getting, I guess, like not giving to them appropriately, and not just like monetarily, but with my presence. Because like I get busy. I'm working, I'm traveling, I'm doing different things. So I make sure to try to make them a priority because the time with them is precious. There's only so much time that we can have, especially when you're living your own life and your parents, the clock keeps ticking and at some point they won't be there. So support them monetarily and with my presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what can you do to spend more time with them, or what can you do to preserve their memory in a deeper way?
Oh, that's nice. I think it's about like one thing that I've been doing is trying to deeply embrace different family stories. Like the other day, we went through my aunt's story. Like my aunt came to the United States in like the 60s when she was like 16 years old. And I was going through my aunt's story with my mom. And I'm like, I want to make sure that I have all these major points down in sequence. Like, who does she come with? When does she arrive? How long until she met her husband? How does she meet her husband? And just like going through the line like that. And the other part is just like the act of presence. Like when we're hanging out as a family unit, we're just like hanging out in the living room, just when my dad is speaking, when my mom is speaking, that I'm giving them my best listening possible. Yeah.
Yeah, man. The reason why I bring it up is because
Yeah.
like this is the most important thing
Yeah.
often, and the thing that in our current society doesn't get the most recognition or service to, like spending time with your parents, calling them often,
Yeah.
like keeping them in the loop. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need another podcast. You need to spend time with your family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, totally. And like, I'm often thanking my mom and my dad for like giving me the opportunity to exist. Like, dude, I don't even know if I've ever even mentioned this on a podcast. When I was born, something happened when I was born where I couldn't breathe well. And I was born having those sort of like those little seizures that people have when they're running out of oxygen and the body starts like convulsing a bit. So I was born having those. And so this is in Ecuador. They didn't have the proper tools that they needed in the delivery room. So I was born and the doctor just like took me, saw that I wasn't breathing and just like ran to the other side of the hospital to like put me in the incubator. And they told my mom and dad, they were like, he's not going to make it. You need to like go buy a coffin and all that stuff. So for my mom, I think it was very harrowing. Like it was very difficult, that whole experience. And she was obviously recovering. But my dad was like coming to the hospital every day. And he was just like praying over me, like, just giving me attention. And I was in the hospital for a month until they were like, all right, he's good, he can go. But when I think about my life and how easily it could have, blipped out, at the very beginning, I'm just thinking, okay, well, I'm here. I have to give tremendous amounts of gratitude to my parents and try to serve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the impact of that being the context for your entire life?
I know. So,
like, how does that impact one's journey? How old are you now?
I am 36. I just turned 36 a little while ago. I think the impact has been that I've always had a really interesting relationship with my lungs. Yeah, there's always like, I had asthma as soon as I got to the United States, set foot here, like asthma developed. And part of me has always like, I heard the story. So part of me has had like a fear of having a seizure, but it's like, no, dude, you were just running out of oxygen. And I think it's like given me like, I think in an interesting way, like a positive chip on my shoulder where it's like, okay, I overcame that as like a 1 month old. So like if a hard task comes, we can do it. We got it. Just like you set your foot down, you stay determined and you overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because one of my friends recently told me she was in the hospital, or her mom was going through a traumatic experience
Yeah.
while she was in the womb,
Whoa. Yeah.
and just what that leads
Yeah.
your life to become, and where it can go down, and how that can manifest in you decades later.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think about, like, what are the circumstances that your mother brought you into this world with?
Yeah.
It's like, was your mom having trouble breathing? Was your mom like in a difficult,
I
or is it
know.
just,
It makes me wonder. I know. I think after this, you're making me really curious because I should ask more details. Like, were there difficulties that she was going through in that time um, while she was having me, while I was being, in her womb?
yeah.
Because it makes me, yeah, there could be more there. Yeah, you got me. You're
Yeah,
making me put my sleuth cap on. I'll go figure out some more info.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also from the perspective of like meditation, which you've
Hmm.
devoted so much of your life to,
Hmm.
it's about coming back to the breath.
Yeah, it really
Would you
is.
look at that?
I
That
know.
that is the thing that you wanted so badly as a child,
Yeah. Yeah.
is actually the thing that you've devoted your life to, coming back to the breath.
Totally. Totally. I think it's really interesting that this relationship so like the 45-day course, um, every course that we have, whether it's a 10-day course or a longer course, 1/3 of it is devoted to this technique called anapanasati, which is awareness of the natural respiration. You're aware of the respiration come in, you're aware of it going out. You're not moving it, you're not trying to manipulate the breath, you're just aware of it naturally moving. And so I just spent 15 days doing that. And it's powerful. It's such a simple technique that it's so easy for someone to overlook how transformative it could be. But the basic, the basic specialty of that technique is that if you do it and you do it with continuity, it deeply calms and concentrates the mind. And it can make the mind so one pointed, like so focused, that you can just be so immersed in your breath for it can start off with 1 minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 3 hours. You can just be so immersed in your breath. And that creates pretty extraordinary levels of concentration. And then you take that concentration after those, 15, that 1/3 of the time period, whatever it can be, you do that for 15 days, and then we take that attention and we turn it into the body. And you're like, okay, now let me explore. Let me feel what's in the framework of the body and try to understand how this universe is composed. Because your body is basically just a little sample set of the universe. Yeah.
What comes up then when you look at the body, or what came up for you?
The clearest, most evident truth repeatedly is impermanence. Like the moment you take that attention into the body, your body, I mean, with that amount of time of concentration that you develop, the body sometimes can feel like this like quickly moving river of atoms. Like it just feels like nothing is solid. It's just the whole body is just have you ever had soda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the top of the soda and you see the little fizzy bubbles?
Mm-hmm.
That's what the whole body feels like. Yeah.
Wow.
They're just popping, coming up, arising, passing. Yeah.
What does that imply? Or what does that lead you to believe?
It just gives you one of like the basic fundamental laws of the universe, that something will arise, it will exist for some time, and then it'll pass away. And that when you embrace that truth, you start learning how to let go. Right? Because that's those two have that interesting relationship, because this table, okay, it looks hard, but what is it really? If you were to really take what is inside the table, it's a big chunk of subatomic particles.
And so a lot of people might hear that and be like, okay, then why do anything at all?
Oh, yeah, you got to be really careful with the nihilism. So when you are understanding that truth of impermanence, it relaxes your sense of self. It makes your sense of self not be so tight. And what happens for a lot of people is that love starts springing forward, because it's not like, oh, I don't exist, I can do whatever I want. No, it's like, okay, let me not cling to this idea of me so intensely. And when you let go of that tension, the mind is more so able to share loving kindness. may I be happy and may you be happy. May all beings be happy. And you're like literally sharing. And like there's even, you can even share your merits. Like anything good that I have done, may you share of that too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how love and peace arises when nothing is present.
Yes. Yeah. It's really because think about the mind. Like the mind is like, it's like a rabbit. Like it's just jumping around, jumping into the past, jumping into the future. Of course, you're not going to be able to feel like love or peace or anything. Like you got to train it. You got to teach it that you're safe. You can relax. You're okay here. And then that clarity of love, because like love feels like it's just one of the clearest mediums with which to engage the world.
Yeah. And it connects us.
Yeah.
It seems seemingly like back home.
Yeah. The way I suffer, I know. I've been observing my mind. I know you also have the potential to suffer the same way. So if I'm struggling, like I would appreciate your help. And if you're struggling, I hope that I can help you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that point, it feels like to me that you've been diving deeper into relationships and
Yeah.
writing about relationships.
Yeah, I have. It was I've been with my wife for a number of years. I mean, we got together when she was 18 and I was 19. And, we had a few moments where we took some breaks and we were trying to figure out if we were really going to stay together for the long haul. And it has been a huge, humbling journey because I know I got it wrong so many times. She got it wrong as well. We were constantly trying to do what you said earlier. Like, how can I get you to do the things that I want you to do so that I can be happy? Which is a foolish mission, right? It's a foolish, like the only way that this is really going to work is if I just accept you as you are and we can make commitments to each other, right? Where like, I'm going to find what feels good to be able to support you as best as I can. I want to support you in the creation of your happiness, but it doesn't matter how hard I try, I cannot make you happy. That's something that has to come from within. But I think the relationship stuff came up right at the beginning of the pandemic. Like we were in New York City. That's when like the first wave of the pandemic, very quickly, 20,000 people died, like really fast. Within those 2 months of the pandemic starting, everybody knew somebody who was either in a coma or dead. And all of my friends, we even had one friend who was like, the hospital couldn't even take her. She was like laid out in bed, couldn't move for like 2 weeks. And we were stuck. So like my wife and I were, in our apartment alone. And that's when not only did we get more opportunities to love each other and just spend time together, like similar to how it was when we were in college and we could spend loads of time together. But now we started realizing that, there were a lot of kinks in our relationship that we had to work out. Like how to give each other proper space, how to properly listen to each other, how to just like be there with each other in a way that wasn't like, like too much or like overwhelming or like not to be in each other's space constantly. So it was like learning how to love each other a little more loosely. And I think that the relationship now is just like 1,000 times better than before.
Wow. Okay, this is fascinating to me because if you have a relationship with someone who's 18 or 19 and you start the relationship on that context, there's so much growth when it's someone like
so much.
Me or you and like people listening to this podcast. You're a different person by 28. You're a different person by 36.
Yeah. When I was 19, I was a rat. Like I was like not like a.
What's a rat mean?
A rat, like I was just like not nice. Like I was like kind of a jerk and like, so like I had it hard growing up, like poverty really like that was my main form of trauma. And it was hard living in that constant scarcity. So I developed a very tough exterior. And I think, yeah, I just wasn't as nice as I could have been. Like back then, I think I was too rough in my interactions. And now, since I started meditating, I was realizing, okay, I need to devote myself to the path of gentleness. Like I really have to, like, I don't know how your day was. So if we're going to interact, let me enter into the interaction very smoothly, calmly, so that we can find and create a healthy harmony between the two of us. And I try to do that, in any environment that I am, because I know I was like, just like too loud, too, whatever. I was 19. Like I can't like, I didn't know that much, but as I've grown up, I've seen that gentleness is a good path to walk.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
important. It seems like
hmm
those speaking with the most wisdom say it the most softly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really true. But yeah, my wife and I were like totally, we've evolved many times since then. And it was interesting. Like there was a period of our relationship that was from 19 to 24. Like we were constantly barely making it, because we had no like there was no concept of emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. There was just like constant finger pointing, like, you piss me off, you have to say sorry. And it's almost like both of us were trying to control the narrative, right? Even though both of us probably got hurt at different points, one of us would try to be like, okay, you have to apologize. And this I can't even call it communication. It's more like like a little battle. And it just never worked. We were both just so full of tension. But when we started meditating, I started noticing that not only did I feel a little lighter in my mind, but I started not being so attached about the outcomes of every single argument. And as we kept meditating even more, I started realizing, okay, trying to get her to apologize or she trying to get me to apologize is kind of dumb. So instead, I want to know why we're even fighting. Why, like, what happened? So it became an opportunity for both of us to share our truth, where it was like, okay, I want to hear your perspective. I'm going to do my best, even though my ego does not want to listen. I'm going to do my best to listen, and then we'll take turns, and then I'll listen to your story too. And then when we understand each other, like, have you ever read Thich Nhat Hanh? He's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk
I've heard
in the
of it.
Mahayana
Haven't read.
tradition.
Yeah.
Beautiful human being. Um, I think he wrote at some point that love is understanding. And
Mhm.
boy, was he right. He was so right. Because like once you understand, then like you like diffuse the bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I really attempt to help a lot of people learn about their parents and to love their parents.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's ask questions about them.
Yeah.
Let's learn
Yeah.
from them. Let's learn what were their circumstances, what made them this way
Yeah.
to make you this way.
Yeah.
And when people start seeing and understanding their parents, then they can start to love them.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes it takes a bit of information for you to develop compassion. Right?
Takes a bit of information for you to develop compassion.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's a story in your head.
Right. Right. And you don't know. Like you literally don't know. Like when I think about my childhood, like my parents, they loved each other, but I grew up seeing them fight constantly.
Yeah.
Like because they were the only two adults in the room, and every month they were trying to figure out how to pay the rent. Every month they were trying to put more food in the fridge, and it was not easy. And to be trapped in that mode for years, it made me start believing that they didn't love each other or that they weren't right for each other. And the problem, it wasn't that they weren't right for each other. The problem was structural. The problem was like it felt like our family was in a submarine that was too deep in the water. There's too much density that's closing in on the submarine and starting to crack the walls, But now that we're older and now that like, we're this family unit, we can all help each other. Like my parents love each other so much. They're so happy. They're like,
And how'd that happen?
it just took time. It took like, graduating from college, getting a job, my brother doing the same, like getting a job and my sister as well. And now we can, my dad still works. My mom, she had to retire early from kidney issues, but we all support our parents, So whoever in the family is in need, everyone else supports them.
Yeah.
But now, it's not just like on the shoulders of my parents. Yeah.
What happens when you start meditating or you start looking inward and then your parents you want your parents to understand? What do you tell people
Yeah.
in this scenario?
Yeah, I would have these long conversations with my mom, especially because my mom is like a very devout Catholic. Like Jesus is her best friend, and like rightfully so, great person, you know. Like,
Absolutely.
and she was curious because she knew it was good for me. Like right off the bat, come back from the course, and she's like, "Okay, like you keep going, you know, you keep, whatever it is you're."
Something changed in a positive direction.
Yeah, yeah. But she didn't she was curious. She wanted to understand what I was doing, and I would explain to her, you know. Um but this whole Vipassana path, like the point of it is to end suffering. Like the ultimate point. Like you may not do it in this lifetime, but it takes a lot of effort, but you eventually can get to points where that aspect of the mind is no longer reacting. That part, the reactive part of the mind is what's causing all that tension, all that stress, all that suffering in the mind. So eventually you can, instead of having that reactive muscle, you build this muscle of equanimity. Equanimity being the balance of mind, that you can just observe something as it is without any craving or any aversion. You're just taking it in as it is, not as how you want it to be. When you develop this extraordinary amounts of equanimity, then you can free yourself, right? And when I started explaining that to my mom, it like clicked in her. She's like, "Oh, what you're doing is a path to sainthood." And it's like, yeah, actually, in this tradition, when someone does become enlightened, they're referred to as a saint. And not in the sense of a saint of like, oh, no one's praising them. It's just like that's just a terminology that they have. And it's funny because in that conversation, like she just got it. She was like, "Oh, great. You're like in this mode of cultivation." And I remember when I first did my first 45-day course, she was like, "Right, like, you know, Jesus spent those 40 days in the desert."
Right.
And what did you know, and the devil was haunting him the whole time. So like in some ways, like I felt, you know, I get to see my own hell, like the self-created hell in my mind. And in no way, right? Like I'm not enlightened, anything like that. Like I'm just somebody else who's on the path. But you get to see like everything that's in there. And some of the things are very beautiful, and other things are quite hellish.
Well, I think it's interesting that your mom understood when you spoke to her in her language.
Yep.
Right. We can only understand if it's in the context of the thing that we already know.
Totally, totally. And I think what's always mattered is that there's always been a sense of respect, right? Like my mom is really happy. Like I don't consider myself a Buddhist, but I take the Buddhist teaching very seriously. Like I really think that he is like the preeminent human being who understood the mind better than anybody else. And he understood the mind so much that like if you look at like the early Buddhist texts in the Pali Canon, like not only was he able to liberate the mind, but he understood the universe so fundamentally that he like understood that there were subatomic particles. He understood like, you know, elementary physics to a certain degree. And to me, it's like this an incredible human being. But there's that sense of respect where different family members, like I meditate, but I have some family members who've benefited greatly from prayer, other family members who've benefited tremendously from therapy, other family members who needed psychiatry and it helped them tremendously. And to me, it's all love. Like as long as you're taking steps forward, we can be best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you're going inward.
Right.
And looking at the truth of who you are.
Totally.
And peeling back the layers.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's table stakes.
Yeah.
For becoming more love.
Totally, totally. And you see that. You see people, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about this moment in history that we're in. Like, even though there's, you know, there's always so much darkness, so much, you know, different ways that people are hurting each other. But to me, it wows me when I think about how there are so many practices available, like Eastern practices that have been developed for thousands of years, like all these different forms of yoga, all these different forms of meditation. And then the Western world has been developing all these different forms of therapy and psychiatry. There's all these indigenous practice, these like different, like Christian practices. You look at, there are ways to cultivate yourself so that you can understand and explore the inner forest inside of you. And it blows my mind. To me, it's like, whoa. So when you find that there's so much anxiety inside you or so much tension, you can literally go on your computer and type in, what can I do for my anxiety? And you're going to get mad stuff, tons of options. And then you just have to check in with your intuition and say, okay, wait, let me see what I can try.
Yeah. It is both the easiest time in human history to become enlightened and the most difficult time to be a human being.
Yeah.
It's like both are true.
It's really true because there's a war for your attention.
Yes.
It's, man, when I spend those 45 days totally off the internet, no phone calls. The moment I get there, I give up my devices. And then I've been using my phone for the past 7 days. Boy, those algorithms are good, man. The moment I turned my phone on, it knew exactly what I wanted to see. Like one of my favorite reality TV shows, it showed me like the trailer for the upcoming season, and I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that. You know?
How did it know?
I don't know. But Meta has enough data on me that they knew. They're like, this boy needs to see this.
Right after the 45 days.
Right after the course, and my wife and I are just like, we're like, whoa, this world is weird. Like the scrolling, it has to be kept to a minimum because it burns. Like your energy is a precious resource. And it's just like to take in information requires energy. And the phone is just tossing tons of information at your face.
So what do you do if you find yourself in that loop of scrolling?
Again, I drop down on the strong determination. Strong determination. I'm not going to like overdo it. If in the midst of scrolling I start feeling my energy fading, I'm like, I gotta switch it. Or my favorite thing is that I actually threw the Kindle app on my phone, and that's been the best.
Yeah.
That's been the best because then it's like, I don't need to scroll. I'm actually just gonna read a book.
Yeah.
And that's been like a real game changer. It's something a little more generative about reading a book than just like reading disconnected bits of information, right? Yeah.
And it's been edited and there's a thoughtfulness to it.
Right. It's someone like gently trying to move your mind through a process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really so true. And also the other part of it is like the scrolling has given you so much and given me so much.
Yeah.
You know, like
right. We benefited from,
And the demonization of the thing that has been so helpful to us. I feel often we throw out scrolling, we throw out the cookie, but it's like, okay, but what are the benefits? Let's also make that equal in the column of how we're approaching this. Because
no, you make a great point. I mean, I think of social media as a way for humanity to have a conversation with itself. And that conversation, I think, is helping progress things in some ways.
You said that as a question.
Because my hope is that ultimately social media has a net positive, because there's definitely been some bad things. Like I've seen how social media has affected teenagers in my family. Yeah. It's not good. Yeah. No, it's like it's heavy on the mind. But then on the other end, like people wage revolutions on the internet. Yeah. and it's quite powerful. So, I mean, we'll see. I think we're like in the middle of it. So it's hard to be like, social media is good, social media is bad. We just need to analyze like what's happening and keep making course adjustments.
Yeah. And it feels perfect. Like it's giving a lot of positive, it's giving a lot of negative, and it nets out.
Yeah. And I also don't think it's not going anywhere. Right. So we need to like figure out the ways that we need to adapt, figure out the ways that are the best ways to introduce younger generations into the global conversation without it harming them. Because that's one thing. Like I was hearing some data the other day about how young people will, like, there was a study done, these 6th graders, so many of them were staying up between 12 and 5 to see the messages that other people were sending them on TikTok because of the fear of missing out. So that the next day they wouldn't know what was up. So they would stay up. But like, can you imagine if you were in 6th grade and you were up from 12 to 5? Yeah. Like, you're not going to learn anything the next day.
Yeah. Sad.
Yeah.
How much of this do you feel responsible for because of building a big platform?
I don't feel that I don't think sixth graders are sharing my messages to each other.
I think they definitely are.
You think so?
I know they
Oh,
definitely
wow.
are.
Yeah. I hope that it's not at midnight. um, that's interesting. I felt like because there was no real alternative that everybody was hanging out on Instagram. Like I opened my account in 2012 and it was a personal account. And then in 2014, I started taking it more seriously in terms of writing. But I felt like I wanted to do something that just brought minimalism into the fold. Because at the time, everyone was just sharing really bright colored photography. And I was like, okay, let me do the inverse of that. Let me actually just keep it in a super simple black and white format and actually take the ideas that because I would initially have like, a particular poem or particular idea that I would want to put out there. And I would spend time removing words, like just removing words and making it more minimalistic to really fine tune it so that it wouldn't take that much energy consumption to process what I was saying. But I mean, it's not perfect. Yeah. Like I'm, another person who's making content. So, but I don't know if I really feel responsible.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure there was no guilt or shame. And
yeah. I've never had that question before, but I think at the ultimate, like I'm sure, yeah, like I think generally my work has had a net positive.
I know it has.
Yeah. I was thinking about this one. Can I tell you? I was thinking about this one for my first book. I stopped checking reviews after this because this one was so crazy. I got this one-star review, and the person was saying my wife left me because of this book, and I was like, dang. Like one, I felt so bad, and then I thought about that for months. And the other end, I was like, actually, that's not my fault. Like, it has nothing to do with me. Like this person it just so happened to line up, help them realize some things, and they realize, okay, this partnership is not working.
Right.
But like in that moment, multiple things happened. Like I did, send meta, like loving kindness to this person, and just like, because I don't want their lives to be harder. But ultimately, like I don't know what's going on in their relationship. And the other thing, it showed me the power of words. Like, what is going on? Like, you can write something and it can affect the life that much.
Yeah. Well, how I start, you have such a big heart, because the fact that your first reaction or response to that would be, I feel so bad about this. Yeah. I've started to look at activations, and someone leaving their wife is an activation, or somebody leaving their partner is they feel activated in that moment to change.
Right.
I've started to look at activations as a positive thing.
Yeah.
So when someone gets mad at me, I'm so happy in that moment, genuinely. Mm-hmm. When someone's mad at someone for something, like, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. Do you see this? Mm-hmm. This is the key to your growth. Mm-hmm. Because it was bringing up something for you in that moment of like, what if my wife left me because she read something?
Totally.
And like, I would feel so upset.
Yeah.
And so the thing that we see in others that are activating them, that we get upset about and wishing it was different, because in that moment you wished it wasn't that way. You wish they were still together.
Yeah.
But it was a relationship that wasn't supposed to work out.
It wasn't supposed to work out. No, totally. And all the power to her. Yeah. Like I remember thinking that too. It's like, of course, like this was probably bound to happen at some point, and it's just a little spark that lit something. But in my mind, because this was like 2017, right? A long time ago.
6 years.
So to my mind, it was like, it just hit me like a bag of bricks. And I was like, whoa, because you spend time online. And online, you just see a bunch of numbers. And like to a certain point, numbers don't really mean anything. And it wasn't until I started doing events and seeing people in person when I was like, and hearing their stories, I was like, okay, like this is actually having an impact.
This is real humans.
Right.
I mean, it's been really helpful for me to host a run club every week for men.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't know you were a runner.
Yeah. But love running.
I'm going to do my first half marathon this year.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah, I'm super pumped.
Oh my God. That's amazing. I want to hear about that journey as well. Because it's meditative for me. But it's like you see people every week who listen to the podcast, who follow tweets, who are just around the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're like, oh, they saw some message and then showed up to this run club.
Yeah.
It's like they saw a podcast and they were impacted by it. Yeah. How does that impact a human? right? And like, how does that impact me who's creating all these things?
Mhm.
It's like, whoa, this is different than just
Yeah.
numbers behind a screen or like
Right.
the comments. It's human beings.
Yeah.
It's human beings, man.
So when did you start this run club? Like what's this?
4 or 5 months ago,
And have you always been a runner? Like, do you have a track background or?
I started running a year ago because a friend called me on the phone
Yeah.
and was like, hey, do you want to run the St. Jude's Marathon in Memphis? And I said, my dad ran that marathon exactly 10 years ago. This random marathon in Memphis. I was like, that's a sign. I got to do it.
That's some deep synchronicity. That's
Yes.
beautiful.
So 10 years to the day,
Yeah.
I ran the marathon that my dad signed up for 10 years prior.
And when you got that call, were you able to run like 4 or 5 miles, anything, or you just like went into training mode? Like what happened? This is my podcast now.
I love it.
Now
Great, amazing. There's no
Yeah.
there's no structure or need for it to be
Cool.
anything other than what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, now that I have a date on the calendar,
Yeah.
let me work around that. And like, I probably could run like 3 or 4 miles, but that was like a lot, like 3 or 4 miles.
Yeah.
And now, I've ran 3 marathons in the last 3 months.
3 marathons.
Yeah.
You're giving me so much inspiration.
Good, bro.
So much.
What was your journey with running like?
So I have to tell you so much. So like after I had my rock bottom moment, this is the summer of 2011, like everything that I was talking about earlier about all these struggles with poverty, seeing my parents fight, developed so much sadness and anxiety inside of me. I ended up trying to mediate my emotions with drugs and alcohol, and I just became so unhealthy. Like my mind was so unhealthy, my body was incredibly unhealthy. And I, got to a point I almost lost my life because I had taken too many drugs one night and my body felt like my heart felt like it was going to explode. In that moment, I realized, okay, I got to this point because I did not want to admit to myself that I didn't feel good. Something as simple as that. Like I just didn't want to admit that I didn't feel good and I needed help. And when I realized, okay, I need to make some big changes, I stopped doing the hard drugs. I haven't taken any intoxicants for more than like 9 years. And thank you. And I, a few days after that, I did simple things. Like one, I started challenging myself to feel my emotions. So like whenever I would feel some tension arise, I wouldn't roll up a joint. I would just sit on my bed for 5 minutes, like 5-10 minutes. This is pre-meditating, right? Like there was no technique involved. It was just like, okay, I feel the sadness, and I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna feel it. And then I realized that giant demon that I was so scared of, it was nothing. It was okay. Like, yeah, the feeling sucked. I didn't like it, but it wasn't as scary as I initially thought it would be. The other thing I did was I bought a tub of barley grass. And it was like a pre-wellness, like superfood. Like barley grass isn't that popular as it used to be back then, but I was getting more nutrition and I could feel it. I'm like, okay, like my body was missing nutrition, and I started going on walks because I was living the most like sedentary lifestyle. And then that picked up over time and I started running, and I'm not a fast runner. I really just enjoy being like a nice long distance slow runner. And I think it has something to do with like my Incan roots, right? Like I'm just like I can run for a long time, but I'll run slowly. Yeah. And it's just been the most nourishing thing. And since then, like since that rock bottom moment, I've probably lost like 50 pounds.
Wow.
And now I can run like 8-9 miles, no problem. But then the idea about like, I would say like about 6 months ago came to my mind was like, dude, you can run for longer. You can run for longer. Yes. Like you would finish runs and I'm like, you still feel good, And my buddy who's like a serious runner has run a bunch of marathons and he's doing like a half, I think it was called a half Ironman. Mm-hmm. He was telling me, he was like, you stopped at 8 miles because you actually didn't have one of those little pouches to just like consume a few calories and what your body was missing. He was like, you would have just been able to keep running. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I didn't even know about that.
Gels.
Yeah, the gels. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's funny. I was telling my grandpa that I had these gels. He ran marathons from 40 on, and he was like, what's a gel?
Yeah, what's a gel?
It's like a
Yeah.
new thing. But it's so cool that you've run 8-9 miles and can do that easily now.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you could run a marathon if you want. Like,
I know it's starting to hit me. So I want to, take some good steps, run a few half marathons, and probably knock out a marathon. But I'm loving it, man. It is so fun.
Yeah.
Like running is so fun.
especially if you get into that rhythm of 8-9 miles being easy.
Yeah.
And if you're just in the flow of like, oh wow, like there are thoughts that come up that help writing. What's been running your relationship with running and writing been like?
It's been quite nice. I mean, the combination of, so I meditate every day, 2 hours a day, and then I run every other day. But there's something about the running that keeps sort of the level of contentedness slightly higher than because I've been meditating 2 hours a day for many years now, for the same, like 9 years. And that's fantastic. That's like my path to developing wisdom. But there's something about having the body support that, having the body be stronger. And I thought it was quite helpful that I came into that course, that 45-day course, fitter than I usually do. But I think generally all the running is helping. Actually, I've been switching from writing smaller pieces to writing more essays, and I think it might be in relation to the running.
And why is that?
I don't know. It feels like the mind is able to hold like bigger stories. It's almost like a bigger, like, because what are you doing when you're writing a longer piece? It's almost like you're putting together a painting or a puzzle, and you're starting it and you want to get to a certain point, and at a particular point it clicks and you're like, oh right, it doesn't need another paragraph. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit out and it's all set, and it feels like an intuitive click. But all of that just feels a lot clearer with running.
Wow. Yeah. The way you describe it really does feel like you're painting.
It feels like a painting. Sometimes I sit down and I have no idea what I'm going to write, and I'm like, let's just jam. Let's just see what happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about the transition from going from short writing to long writing?
That's been the best. It's been the best. It's giving me more space. Like, I felt really restricted by the little square on Instagram. It's so restricted. And I was like, I can't keep doing this because it's not going to allow me to like really talk in depth about particular topics. So I was really grateful that when Substack came out, I was like, thank goodness, like, because my hesitation for starting a newsletter was like, my buddies were paying like $800 a month maintaining their newsletters before Substack.
Oh, interesting.
There used to be like all these different services, and when Substack came out, you didn't have to pay. And in fact, you could make money. And when I started doing that, I was like, okay, let me just like flow. Let me just take these topics and go more deeply into them. And it was perfect. Like, I started writing on Substack. That helped me develop that like longer writing muscle so that I could then release my first nonfiction book lighter. And it was incredibly helpful. So now when I write once a week on Substack, and it's fun. It's like playtime. Like, I sit down and I'm like, let me just write for an hour, see what happens. And my wife will read it and she gives it the okay, like, this makes sense. And then we send it out.
Is she your editor?
Like my like unofficial editor who doesn't want to be my editor.
What's that like? What's that like to have somebody who's can understand the work, is interested in meditation, is by your side and helping you?
Dude, she's my wife, but she's really my comrade in wisdom.
Wow.
Like, because when you take this path seriously, like, in a way, you're waging a peaceful war against ignorance. And that she's there fighting alongside me, like trying to come out of ignorance, trying to be more embedded in this perspective of love. And we help each other. Like, we're not perfect people. We make mistakes. And it's really nice. Like, not only can we talk about, she also sat that 45-day retreat. And so we get to process these things together. But then she understands my writing, so she can help me with, she okays every single book. There's even been sometimes when she like will sneak a piece into my book, but she's so like she doesn't want to be in the front. Like she doesn't want to have her own account. She has her private Instagram account
She
with
likes everyone.
yeah, with 300 followers that are people she knows. But she doesn't want to be like an internet person. But I think in clarity and connection and in the way forward, she wrote like 2 pieces in both of them, which is really cool. So sometimes I'll see like celebrities put up her poem and I'm like, I'm happy to give her credit, but she doesn't want it. But she's like, yeah, just throw it in there. And I'm like, okay. And I put it in and like famous people would be like sharing it online. It's so funny.
That's incredible. They're like the secret passages from your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. She puts them in and people love them. They're like super straightforward, simple. But yeah, I'm just like, I'm so grateful for this person. Like she's just the best.
It sounds like you guys share one mind in some sense.
We flow together.
Yeah.
We flow together. We serve together. We challenge with we solve problems together because there are always these moments where like, either in her family or my family, like people go through hard things. And if you have enough family members, like you'll see different family members struggle. So we figure out how we can help.
It's really beautiful. I think a lot of people would love to have a version of that in their own life.
Yeah, I've heard that many times, but that's why I'm always like doubling down on gratitude with her. Like I wake up this morning, we're in the hotel room. I wake up this morning, I sit up, start meditating, set my timer for an hour, and she's sleeping. She's like knocked out, and I'm just like so happy thinking about how like she's there laying down next to me, just enjoying her sleep. Like she always needs an hour more than I do. and I'm just feeling like it's just bubbling with gratitude.
Dude, really special.
Yeah.
My girlfriend recently started sending me your stuff.
No, that's so funny. You're like, I know this dude.
It's like he's actually coming on the podcast too.
Oh, that's funny. How long y'all been together?
For 6 weeks.
Okay.
But it's this feeling of, wow, I've never met someone like this before. Who's shared vision, shared purpose, same core values, just such a light, and it's just the same feeling that you're describing. And I'm like, the fact that every human being won't experience this is really sad to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But people have their own journeys. Right. They have their own karma. They have their own destination. But to you, my friend, enjoy getting that early moment when you're first really getting to know each other and you're getting to hear the most granular details of each other's stories. It's really precious. Really precious. Enjoy.
I think one of the most important things that I've taken from the relationship thus far is about the activations and is about the things that upset you or the things that you want it to be different is your key to your freedom.
Yeah.
And having someone who's such a clear mirror who can point that out in me and I can point that out in her allows the relationship to blossom, because every time we point it out, we are risking the relationship to become closer. And so for you and your wife, what are some of the things that you've had to point out in each other that has actually led to deeper intimacy?
Oh, I think we were both making the same error. It's so subtle. The one moment that really clarified it for the both of us when we were sort of messing up was that, so I was in the kitchen, I was working on my laptop. She was in the living room working on her laptop. We hadn't spoken for like 2 hours. She comes into where I am and she's laughing. And I'm like, what's up? And she tells me that she just spent the last 2-3 hours trying to figure out how this tense feeling inside of her was my fault. And she was like, I spent so much time just going further back in time, trying to find a reason why this feeling that has nothing to do with you is your fault. And I was like, whoa. And it clicked inside my mind. I'm like, I do that same nonsense all the time. Because sometimes, honestly, for a lot of times, it's not that deep. Like sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're grumpy simply because you didn't sleep that well. Or you ate something that was too heavy the day before. It's not always like this trauma, X, Y, and Z. Like sometimes it is, but every moment of tension is not like oh, this traces back to the hardest moment of my life. Not necessarily. It's probably like you ate something that wasn't that good for you. So,
People are going to be like, my deep dark chart. No, you just didn't get enough sleep.
you didn't sleep that well, you know? So what we learned from that moment and started applying into our daily lives is like we are very vocal to each other about where we are in our emotional spectrum.
Yes.
Like if like we wake up, I'm like, how are you doing? And she's like, not good. And I'm like, great. Amazing. Thank you for giving me the information that I need to support us in having a good day. And she similarly, like, you know, we'll check in, I think at least like 3 times a day about how we're doing, how the energy is going. And it's nice, honestly, because if I need more support, well, she's there. Or if she needs more support, I'm there. And we can just take things off each other's plates. But we've been doing that since the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems like over communication. It could seem like that to some people. And that is actually what I realized
Yeah.
is the most important. Like over
Yeah.
communicate what's going on inside
I
of
want
you.
data.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it doesn't annoy her and I'm not annoyed by it. So it feels good.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it gives you more information and allows you to make better decisions.
Yeah.
And it's like people can't read minds.
No, we can't. And we can spend enough time with each other when we can see each other. Like, you know, she can see when my energy is low sometimes. I can see when hers is. Like she sometimes can just like look at me and I know exactly, you know, it's time to go or it's time, you know, like whatever it is. Like a lot of information can get passed just with
Eye contact.
eye contact.
Sure.
But the more finer details, I think it's been so helpful to just have that rhythm between the two of us of like, how are you feeling? Like what's happening inside of you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
how has being a writer made you better in relationships and communicating outside of writing?
Oh, that's interesting. I think it's being a writer has given me a certain degree of confidence that I didn't have before. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life.
Isn't that funny looking back where it seems so obvious now and
Yeah.
so clear?
Yeah.
But I think people really need to hear that,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like this guy, it's so clear he's a writer. Look how talented he is. Look at these poems. Look at
Yeah.
this long form. Look, it's all amazing.
It took a long time, and Danny, when I went to college, I thought I needed to become an investment banker. And like it was so dumb. Like it was it's like just the worst idea. But this is what happens when, you know, the mind is constantly accumulating, like constantly accumulating conditioning. And one of the conditionings that I gathered over time was like, okay, I'm poor, so I have to do something that's going to make me a lot of money. And it was just a bad idea. You know, I ended up working at a bank for 1 month and I ran out of there because it was like, it just was not the right thing for me. And when I started writing, like, I didn't start making any money from writing until I was about like 28, you know? So it took a long time for me to feel like
When did you start?
I started when I was 25. And I came to my wife and I was like, I asked her, I was like, I need time. Like, can you give me time? And she very reluctantly said yes, because I was putting a lot on her shoulders. Like she was a scientist. And we were both living in New York City, and she took care of us on her like $60K salary in New York City. We were living in a super simple apartment, like definitely living check to check. And it was a struggle for like 3 years. But then she saw that the momentum was building and that it was worth continuing giving me time. And then when I self-published my first book, Inward, I ended up selling like 12,000 copies in like 6 months, which back then is like a lot. And that's when we knew we're like, okay, like this might work out.
Wow.
Yeah. But since then, I mean, now I sold like 1.3 million books, and now it's just like, not only has writing given me the ability to process information, but it's made me have this sense of confidence that listening to my intuition was the right thing. Yeah, because I didn't want to trust it, man. It was asking me to risk way too much.
But you did find a way to listen to it.
Yeah, no, I felt like I had to, and honestly, I had a backup plan. Like I told my wife straight up, I'm like, look, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna happily be a high school history teacher. I love history. I like two of my best teachers were history teachers. So I'm like, I'll go do that and I'll make, a decent living.
But also for 1 month into your investment banking job to be like, no. As growing up poor,
Yeah.
doesn't seem like that would be an easy choice.
Yeah. But it was before. So like that moment happened a few months before my rock bottom moment. So like I was already trending down. Like I was just like steamrolling down, super unhealthy mentally and physically. And I just like, I felt terrible. Like I felt terrible every single day. So I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there who would say to themselves, I would love to sell over 1 million books
I know.
in my life.
It's wild. Yeah.
Like, what do you tell people who are like, I want that reality for myself?
I tell them it's just it's a matter of consistency.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know this as well as I do. It's consistency. Like, how much time have we been? Like, I'm sure you've seen the same things. Like, when I was sharing my writing on Instagram, I remember a few other writers that were fantastic writers, and then they just like drop off. They give up at some point. And I don't know why, right? Like we weren't like friends or anything, but I see, they stop and I'm like, wow, like that person was great. So like I don't think of myself as like the best writer, not at all. I just didn't stop. I just kept going.
Yeah. It seems like trite advice, but it's been the truth from my experience.
Right.
Completely. And
Yeah.
and I think consistency builds respect.
Mm-hmm.
It builds respect for people who are on the path. It builds respect for people who are watching.
Yeah.
Builds respect for yourself, for showing up for yourself over and over and over again.
Yeah. And you're cultivating your talent. Yeah. I remember when we had our first conversation versus now, it's like I'm talking to a whole new person.
That's exactly what I said to my girlfriend about 3 hours ago. Yeah. I was like, it's two different humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what is that? That's just the reps.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's just becoming more comfortable with myself.
Yeah.
That just sitting in the seat of my soul and sitting behind the mic over and over and over again.
How many episodes have you done?
This is 460.
460, my man. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pod time.
Yeah. It's a lot of conversations and it's a lot of understanding people and understanding myself better.
Yeah.
Every time you do it, you have to get some benefit outside of the things that other people think are the benefits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll never keep doing it.
Amazing. It's just making me think like we have to make sure we shouldn't wait 3 years to do this again. We should at least like get into a loop of like every year and a half because I like this is like a good check-in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you feel from this?
I just feel like we've both grown up. Yeah. How old are you?
28.
28. Perfect. Yeah. So you started young. Good for you, man. And when did you start the pod? Was it 2020 or?
2020 when I was 25.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's amazing. No, it just makes me feel like I'm just checking in with my brother and it's like, okay, we have to stay in more contact because we're on a similar wave. So I don't know. I've been really enjoying just watching you from afar, doing your thing. And I'm like, it makes me feel like a sense of validation in like, yeah, that's how you do it. You don't stop. And in the process of not stopping, you grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a message I feel like more people need to internalize and really sit with.
Yeah.
And for me, meditation was how I got to this point. And I think that meditation was how you started writing as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just quiet everything and there will be a voice that comes up that tells you the truth of what to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that your intuition comes up through your mind or through your body? How is your intuition arriving for you? I know it's different for different people.
Yeah, it's a great question. It feels just like it feels sometimes body, sometimes mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it depends. What about for you?
But is the message, because like my mind is always like, give me ice cream. That's not my intuition, right? Like,
well, I look at the ego versus soul.
Nah, okay. It's
like, what is my soul dictating me to do?
Yeah.
And the more that I meditate, the more that I can sit in the seat of my soul.
Yeah. And clarifying the channels. Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. For me, it's it feels like a calm knowing that is emerging through the body and pointing me in a particular direction. So like, it doesn't feel like words, but I remember when like my wife and I lived in Boston and I really started my writing career in New York City, and I knew my body was just like, go to New York, go to New York, go to New York. Like, and it wasn't a voice, but I was just like, I could feel it through and through. And it did that for like a lot of months before I was ready. So the signal of what to do would come up repeatedly until I was like ready to take the task.
And then you were stuffing it for the months of like, no, I can't do that, or like, I'm going to entertain that.
Yeah, I think it was more like preparation. Like then we were both working, we both started saving money, and we also knew that we had this period in our lives. We actually, before Boston and like in between Boston and New York, we actually ended up living in Ecuador with my family for 3 months. And we decided, we're like, okay, we're young, we don't have any kids, like, let's go, like, we decided we wanted to get married, but I was like, let's go meet my family. Like, I don't really know my family that well. You definitely don't know my family. So let's go hang out. And we just like hung out with my grandma and my cousins and my uncles and aunts, that whole 3 months. And it was the best, like getting so rooted in that.
And then to go to a new place after
And
that.
then after that, like 1 month after that, straight to New York.
Yeah. What other intuitive hits have come up for you that have been so clear, like moving to New York City?
Definitely the big ones are so I went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut. That was like probably the biggest move that I made, probably that set up the rest of my life. Like I got good grades in high school, but not the best grades. Like I think in 10th grade, I skipped like 60 days of school or something like that. And then they wanted to like hold me back a year, but I still had like a B average. So like I ended up, just like having this long conversation with the principal, and with the vice principal, and just like trying to get him to agree to not kick me back. Cause I was like, dude, I have like a 3.1. Like, you're really gonna hold me back? And so my grades were all right, but not the best. But I ended up picking them up at the end, junior year and senior year. And I started looking at Barnes and Nobles, like all those like college magazines. And I was trying to see like, which one stood out. And Wesleyan was about an hour and a half from Boston. So I was like, okay, not too far from my family, but far enough that I really get my own experience. And I like could not let go of like my body was just pointing me so hard in that direction. And then the hardest moment was when I got a package from Tufts University that was way better than the one from Wesleyan. Like Wesleyan, I had loans. I had to like pay like $2,000. And, this is like a lot for an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And then for Tufts, all I had to do was pay $200. No loans, nothing. Just pay $200. And I was like, these schools are both great, but I couldn't say yes to the $200. I was like, I'll just take the loans and go to Wesleyan. And why? I met my wife there. I met my wife there and my friend Sam that introduced me to the technique that I have been practicing for the past 12 years. So like I had to go there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about following your intuition. To most people, it seems crazy.
Yeah. It was dumb, dude. I said yes to all these loans that ended up amounting to like $30,000-$40,000 of loans, and I could have gone to school for free. And I was like, nah, I can't. Like, I have to go this way.
Were your parents like, what is wrong with you? Was the people around you friends? What was their
I don't
response?
even know if I showed the Tufts plan to my parents.
The truth comes out.
Yeah.
Parents, you hear it on this podcast for the first time. Sorry to break the news to you. It was worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it. Yeah, I have no recollection of like talking about it with them. I remember just being like, dude, that offer is ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how does somebody it seems like that's in your nature to follow your intuition, because most people would have gone the Tufts route, or if they weren't following their intuition, that's what they would. How do you get better at following your intuition?
I mean, like you just said, I think we're both akin to meditation, right? Like we both like feel the value of meditation. I think for other people, it may not be their thing. But I feel like those moments of silence, and one of the best ones is like going on long walks. So, it's like just have moments where like your senses are not being under attack. Like the TV's not telling you stuff, the phone's not telling you stuff, just like quiet it all down and you'll be able to feel yourself. And then information will arise, and you'll be able to start telling the difference between the nonsense of the mind and like what's actually worth listening to. But for me personally, meditation has made it really clear, like what's craving, what's aversion, and what is like a practical, skillful, loving action that should be taken.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
clear that going to Wesleyan was the
It was the
loving
move.
action.
It was the move, man. Like I would have never met her. Then like we were literally, then when I was a sophomore and she was a freshman, we were both in the same hall. And it was just like I don't know if we would have ever met otherwise.
And
Yeah.
what's the story of how you guys met?
Well, I mean, we ended up being in the same hall. We quickly became friends, and people actually thought that we were dating because she would come and like we would hang out in my room, but we were just hanging out as friends, and we did that for like 2.5 months, where we were just like telling each other everything about our lives. And what happened, what kind of changed the events was like, one, there was like a giant Halloween party, and we danced together for the first time. And I was like, oh wow, I really like being close to her. And then a week passed, and I started noticing that there were these two other guys who were trying to date her. And in my inside, I was like, no way. Like I have to shoot my shot right now. And then I told her that I had feelings for her. And it was so funny because I was wildly nervous. Like I was like sweating and just like, my face was red. And I told her that, I like her. And what she did was so baller. She looked at me and she was like, I need time. Like, give me some time to think. And so I left without, her. She didn't affirm if she liked me or anything, like nothing, right? And so I end up, I leave, I go to some party. The whole time I'm like moping around because I don't know what's going on. And then I get a text back from her like 3 hours later, and she's like, come back to the hall. And I go back to the hall. She meets me in my room. And the first thing she says to me is, what are you thinking long term?
As an 18 or 19.
Bro, Danny, I looked at her and I was like, I need to evade this question. And then my response to her was, I was like, do you even like me? Like, and dude, to this day, it's like, it cracks me up because like, she got me, man. Like, cause she was being really mindful. She was like, we're really close friends. I don't want to mess up this friendship for some short-term fling. And she's just always been like a really serious person. So she was like, what are you thinking long-term? And like, now we're married.
What was your response to that question?
I evaded, like I was just, so I responded with a question, like, do you even like me? And then I think we like kissed or something, and like, but it's been the best. It's been such a good ride. Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you've had that experience and that it started as friends and you got out of the friend zone. And
made it out of the friend zone.
You are literally an inspiration for people worldwide, for young men. Dude, I'm just so grateful for you as a human being, and just so grateful that we got the opportunity to just sit here, talk about the truth of life and what's coming up in the experience, and have a real soulful conversation.
Yeah, it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing. I consistently keep forgetting that we're recording and we're filming. I like keep thinking we're just chilling. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just want to say thank you for being such a beautiful soul. Like, I really feel that the truth behind like your words and what your intentions are, I feel it from being in your presence. And I feel that there's just the beautiful person inside and out. So thank you for being here.
Thanks so much. And likewise, I see the clarity in your eyes, and I'm like, I'm in your corner. I'm here to support in any way possible.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Where should we send people to connect with you further?
I think one of the funnest places where I'm hanging out now is Substack. That's youngpueblo.substack.com, YUNGPUEBLO. And I'm also on Instagram. You can find me with young_Pueblo. And you can find my books at the bookstore. And the latest one is The Way Forward.
Love it. So grateful for you.
Yeah.
Check out all those linked down below. You're the man.
Thank you.
First or second of many to come.
Yeah.
Be well.
Thank you, brother.